All right, Daniel 4, we'll start in verse 35. Daniel 4, verse 35. Daniel 4, 35. And all the inhabitants of the earth are reputed as nothing. Whew, he's setting the bar high there. And he doth according to his will in the army of heaven, and among the inhabitants of the earth, and none can stay his hand, or say unto him, What doest thou? At the same time my reason returned unto me, and for the glory of my kingdom, mine honor and brightness returned unto me. And my counselors and my lords sought unto me, and I was established in my kingdom, and excellent majesty was added unto me. Now I, Nebuchadnezzar, praise and extol and honor the King of heaven, King of heaven, all whose works are truth. Now that's the most basic way to sum up the Bible and anything God is behind is its truth. Truth. And his ways, judgment. And those that walk in pride, he is able to abase. Yeah, no kidding. He knew that from first-hand experience. Yeah. Now, as Nebuchadnezzar had done many times, God has done to him. Nebuchadnezzar would come into a country, and he would subdue the country militarily, and then he would set who he wanted on the throne. Many times, in doing that, he was taking a king off of the throne and replacing him with his choice. Now, God has done the same thing to him. God has removed him from the throne for 7 years. Now God's placed him back on the throne. So Nebuchadnezzar is viewing it as this: I am now the vassal king of God's kingdom. And that is true. God had given him this kingdom. It was not his. He started out by saying, I built all this, I did this, and God said, let me show you. Go sit out in the woods for a while. And then after 7 years, God says, now I'll put you on the throne because I put you there, not because you do anything. And so now he's a vassal of God, and God calls him his servant. Now, he said an interesting phrase in there. He says that all the kingdoms are reputed as nothing. That's what we are. Until you realize that before God, you're not anything. Now, the world should view you as something, and you should be a whole lot better than the world that is around you. However, it's imbalanced if all you see is what they see of you. At some point, you've got to come home and open the book and let God say, you ain't all that. They're not that great either. Genesis 18, verse 27. You are nothing, but if you're in somebody who counts, Jesus Christ, that's all you need. That's all there is. That's everything. Genesis 18, verse 27. And Abraham answered and said, Behold now, I have taken upon me to speak unto the Lord. Now he's talking about himself. He says, which am but dust and ashes. Now that's a healthy way to think of yourself. Abraham is said to be the friend of God. Mm-hmm. God doesn't pal around with cocky people. So as Christians, one of the elements that even a Christian has to always fight against is pride. That's something you never fully conquer. And we're always having to work on it. And the time to work on it is really the worst time ever. It'll be the times that you think you're right. And maybe you've got evidence for it. But just being right doesn't mean you have to be cocky. Mm-hmm. Look at it in Job 25. Yes. Yeah, knowledge puffs up. So the more knowledge you get in there, it goes to your head. And you need knowledge. Without any knowledge in your head, you're nothing. So he puts some knowledge in your head, that blows up. And then it's somehow got to get to your heart. So he bangs your head until it goes down into your heart. And then you're a little humble. And then it's beneficial. Yeah. Job 25, verse 6. He says, how much less man that is a worm. Now, that's not what I thought about myself this morning when I woke up. You're just a worm. Look at that worm looking back at you. He says, man is just a worm. And the Son of Man, which is a worm. You're just a worm, and that's all you can have is a bunch of little worms. Look at Psalm 62. Psalm 62. Psalm 62, verse 9.
Didn't you do something where it said, referred to that the worms were the ones that were the unsaved people?
Yeah, when a person dies and goes to hell, they are a worm. They revert back. Reverse evolution.
Yeah.
Psalm 62, verse 9. He says, surely men of low degree are vanity. Yeah, we would expect that. That's what most people think. You know, the bum on the street. That's a low degree. In America, somebody who hadn't been to college, that's a man of low degree. Or if you've been to college, anybody who got a lesser formula behind their name than you is low degree. But he says, hold on, I'll balance it out. And men of high degree are a lie. That's right. The guy with the PhD and the TH whatever and all those initials behind their name, God identifies them a lie. When we get down to it, they learned all of these facts and figures to be able to spit out. They didn't figure it out on their own. So that's a lie. Most of these educated people are just professional parrots. They're repeating what they've heard. And Christians have to be careful about that too. We learn something and it sounds good, and so then we rehearse it. But until you've gone and studied it and decided between you and God it's so, you don't have the right to speak it. Look at it in Isaiah 40. Oh, I didn't finish the verse. High degree are a lie, to be laid in the balance. They are altogether lighter than vanity. So as if air wasn't enough, he said, no, you're lighter than air. Isaiah 40, verse 17. This is the verse that ought to be on the UN building. All nations before him are as nothing, and they are counted to him less than nothing and vanity. That is, you get all the nations together, and it equals a big fat zero. He says even less than zero. I like our founding fathers. Washington said, once we've paid off the debt that's owed, we should not entangle ourselves with any other country, period. It was not his intent for us to be nation builders, but his own nation. He was upset that he didn't want them to have a two-party system, because he said that would divide the nation. He didn't like the idea of them calling themselves Northerners or Southerners, Easterner or Westerner, because he said that divides up the nation. They had a lot different way of thinking than we do now. But that's the way it is. All of these nations try to get together just like they did at the Tower of Babel, as though we've become something. We made a name for ourselves. God said, no, there's only one name that matters, and it's not the one you make up. Isaiah 41. Isaiah 41, verse 14. Now, when you get humble, it gets God's attention. He looks to the humble man. Isaiah 41, 14. Fear not, thou worm Jacob, and ye men of Israel. I will help thee, saith the Lord, and thy Redeemer, the Holy One of Israel. Now, the way God helps a man is he does not lie to him. The way man does it is, oh, it's okay, we're all kind of like that, and, try to condescend and pump them up in order to make them feel good. God doesn't give you a false sense of security. He says, no, you are a worm, but I got good news for you. I'm on your side. Now, that means something. The only thing that means anything is not that the worm is there. It's that he's got somebody that represents him bigger than anything else. He said in verse 35 of Daniel 4:35, he says, who can say to him, what dost thou? That is, no, as a king, he's saying this. You can't tell God, what do you think you're doing? Mm-hmm. Now, I'm sure he was tempted to say that. Think about it. He's the great, mighty Nebuchadnezzar. He had been ruling all of these nations and conquering one after the other. God had told him repeatedly, I've given these into your hand, and the beast of the field as well. And now God says, oh, you want to feel cocky about it? And then he knocks him down almost to nothing. I think it would be tempting to say, hey, what are you doing? You told me I had all this. Job 9, verse 12. Job 9, verse 12.
When you speak, when you're spoken to.
Mm-hmm.
That's what your dad used to say.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Job 9:12. Behold, he taketh away whom can hinder him. Who will say unto him, what dost thou? That is, when somebody is bigger than you and can knock you out and take you off the playing field, your mouth doesn't flap. Okay, so humans should view it the same way. The Almighty can do whatever he wants, regardless of how you feel about it. We've come into a feeling, have to be fair generation. God's got a different idea of fair. If we just settle it in our mind, he's doing what's fair from eternity's point. And we can count on it. In eternity, we're going to get more than what we thought was fair when we were here.
Amen.
For him to offer any kind of a reward to a Christian is not fair, because he's done all the work. Any reward you can earn, he's doing through you. I mean, he ought to just pat himself on the back when we get there. But he said, I'll give you a reward. Now, that's more generous than I would be. Look at it in Job 34. Job 34, verse 19.
His mercy endureth forever.
Job 34, 19.
Loving kindness.
There's some hard things that you have to go through. Everybody has to go through hard things. And God wants to put a man through a hard time just to see where his dependency is. He says he tries the reins. That is, who's in control. And when you're willing to let go of what you think is fair and right and let him be in control, then he takes over powerfully. Job 34, verse 19. He says, how much less to him that accepteth not the persons of princes, that's the rulers in the nations, nor regardeth the rich more than the poor, for they are all the work of his hands. Now, if you made it, you can destroy it at will. That's God. He's made everything that moves on this earth. If he wasn't the one who engineered it, he allowed it to be produced. Otherwise, it wouldn't be produced. You know, man can't make something. We have things we call man-made or artificial. There's nothing truly artificial. You boil it all down, and at some point they had to use an ingredient God created in order to come up with it.
You read that in Exodus a lot.
Yes.
God gave him wisdom to do these,
Mm-hmm.
these things for the tabernacle.
Yeah,
He gave
Bezalel.
him crafts,
Mm-hmm.
He
Yeah.
gave him ability to do crafts and things, mold gold and stuff. But
Give me some
it
gold. I
says
want to find out if that's my.
it says in like a couple.
See if that's my
You're
gift.
one of the sewers.
You're right.
You're an upholstery.
Give me badger skins. Ecclesiastes 8. Ecclesiastes 8, verse 4. We've seen Nebuchadnezzar, who was a great and mighty king over many kings, but then God proved to him he wasn't the real king. God's the king. Ecclesiastes 8 verse 4. Where the word of a king is, there is power. Well, Nebuchadnezzar had no power. When he was out there eating grass as an ox, when his fingernails and hair were turning into feathers, he didn't have any power. Somebody had greater power than him, and that's who the real king is. He says, and who may say unto him, very same phrase that Nebuchadnezzar learned, what doest thou? Nobody can say, God, you didn't do it right, or how dare you do that now? Look at it in Isaiah 45. Isaiah 45 verse 9. This is pertinent for our day and age. He says, woe unto him that striveth with his maker. That is, it's God that made you and not you. You didn't decide to be born.
Sure.
That was out of your hands. He says, woe unto him that striveth with his maker. Let the potsherds strive with the potsherds of the earth. That is, the clay that couldn't be molded and it's broken into pieces. He said, let the little pieces argue amongst themselves. It has nothing to do with the potter. He says, shall the clay say unto him that fashioned it, what makest thou? Or thy work? He hath no hands. Now, our day and age, they've told the lie to people that are buying it, and I don't know why they're buying it. You'd think that these people are all behind science, but that you can be any gender or conglomeration of genders that you feel like, and that's able to be changed at will. That's somebody saying, my maker made me one way and I don't like it.
Sure.
You know, the next step beyond that, that's even worse, is to say, God made me this way. Now you've made God a liar. When God made a man, and made a woman, if the man or woman says, no, he actually made me this or that, then you've put God into your own sin. Ooh, that's wicked, and there will be some account for that. Romans 9 verse 20.
For sure.
There's a lot of that now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and there's going to be even more. That's
They're very delusional.
mm-hmm. Romans 9 verse 20. Nay, but, O man, who art thou that repliest, now look at that word, against God? Shall the thing formed say to him that formed it, why hast thou made me thus? Ooh. So you can't say, I'm stuck in this whatever gender body, or, I'm a human and I really was meant to be a cat or a dog or something. That's coming, and it is here in certain places. It's on the minority list right now, but it won't be long. It'll flop. We know in the tribulation there's going to be some mutant beings on the earth. Well, there's people trying to mutilate themselves to look like that now. He says, shall the thing formed say to him that formed me, why hast thou formed me thus? That is, someone was bigger and had something in mind. When you form something, you've got a plan, and you're doing it on purpose. You've got a reason behind it. Now, when I form something, I have to reform it 4 or 5 times before I get it right. And maybe not then. But the Creator forms it right the first time. Doesn't mean he owes the form any explanation for why he did it the way he did it. He's the master engineer, not us. Daniel 5 verse 1. Daniel 5 verse 1. He says, Belteshazzar, the king, made a great feast to 1,000 of his lords and drank wine before the 1,000. Wine is not a good thing in the Bible. When the people are getting drunk and having mixed drinks and doing all this, it never was good. Never will be good. The only time it'll be good is if it's grape juice, not fermented. Where he says, don't even look at it when it's fermented. So if you're not supposed to look at it, I don't know how you're going to be drinking it. It's not natural. That's the other thing. They don't. Now, I would give one person in the Bible an excuse. And maybe it's too lenient to give him an excuse. And that would be Noah. When Noah came out after the flood, the atmosphere had changed, and he didn't know the grape juice was going to ferment, and it fermented. However, have you ever tasted something that fermented naturally on its own? It's nasty. Why would you continue to drink that till you became drunk? Okay, something's not right there. Okay. So I don't really give him a pass on that one either, and neither does God. So alcohol is not good. We know it's not good. No man is going to be able to stand before the judgment and say, God, you made me lose my mind because I was drinking this stuff. No, he didn't make it that way. Man did that to himself. The other thing about our verse here is you see how it's jumped subjects. We've been talking about Nebuchadnezzar. And then we get no information about his death. The last thing we read was he was restored to his kingdom. Everything came back to normal. His people came back to serve him and, happily ever after. And then it jumps immediately to Belshazzar. I don't know who that is. The book of Daniel is not written chronologically. It's written subject-wise. And I'm not doing it in chronological order. I've done it that way before. But I'm just doing it the way God gives it. The way God gives it is nice. I like it that way. What he's done, he's given you practical information. This is the way the Bible usually is laid out. In practical sense, there's a reason that Revelation wasn't the first book of the Bible. You need a lot more information before you get to Revelation. We're going to do the same thing in Daniel. He's laid out some practical truths in the book of Daniel at the beginning. Daniel's about to get real deep, but he doesn't start it out that way. And he didn't do it chronologically or historically in order so that you would get the practical first. And then once you've got that down, he'll move into the doctrinal and start making it heavy. This Belshazzar, he says he made a feast and all this stuff. And so we've gone immediately from Nebuchadnezzar to a new king throwing a big party. How did we get there? What a jump. People will say he's not a king because they don't find the historic evidence for it that he was a king. Of course, he's the prince. He's the ruling king because his dad decided that he was going to be a nut. His dad loved a god that was not a Babylonian god. Marduk was the god of the Babylonians. But Nabopolassar, I believe is his name. No, it's not Nabopolassar. It's, let me find his name. Nabonidus. His dad's name is Nabonidus. And Nabonidus really was a religious guy. And he wanted to change the religion of Babylon. He wanted them to serve his god. His god's name was Sin, I think is how you spell it. It's pronounced sin. He goes to Arabia, where that god is worshipped, to study and become a high priest of the god Sin and bring it back. In the meantime, his son, Belshazzar, is the one ruling, because Daddy has taken a hiatus and didn't care anything about it. Now, there's a way if you get the book on, if you get the thing where I did on Mesopotamia, you'll get all the info on it. Belshazzar probably was behind a coup to throw the kingdom to his father, not knowing his father wouldn't take it. Belshazzar, he's aggressive and he's ambitious. He wants the throne. And so his little mind is thinking, who wouldn't want it? That's all powerful. Well, I guess he didn't have a conversation with Daddy. The way he got the throne was he killed a young child who was on the throne. They had a murder in the palace. Palace coup. He kills this child that is said to be, some accounts, as young as 12. They kill the child, and then he claims the throne. And of course, he's claiming it not for himself, he's claiming it for his dad. Dad comes to the throne, is thrown to him because he had the bloodline from Nebuchadnezzar. And he says, I don't really want it, you run it. I've got things I got to do. And so now Belshazzar is running it. Belshazzar, in all practical sense, is actually the king. He's making the rulings. He's the one who told Daniel, if you'll interpret this dream and you'll give me all the things that I want, then I'll make you the third ruler in the land. There's a reason for it. His dad, who's not around, was ruler number 1. Belshazzar is ruler number 2. Even though he's running it as the king, he's really only the son of the king. And so that would make the highest position he could give ruler number 3, and that's what he gave to Daniel. But Daniel said, no, you keep it yourself. Look at it in Jeremiah 27. Jeremiah 27, we're going to go to verse 7. Now let's back up to 6. Jeremiah 27, 6. God speaking here. He says, and now have I given all the lands into the hand of Nebuchadnezzar, the king of Babylon, my servant. Now he calls him a servant. God was behind all this. Remember, it doesn't mean that the man is righteous or holy or anything like that. It just means that's somebody that's going to serve him whether he wants to or not. And the beast of the field have I given him also to serve him. And all nations shall serve him, and his son, and his son's son, until the very time of the land come. And then many nations and great kings shall serve themselves of him. So the Bible gives it a 3-generation passing down. You'll find, if you got the book, there's about 6 kings of Babylon, including Nebuchadnezzar. And it's not Belshazzar being number 3. The reason for that is they're not all descendants of Nebuchadnezzar. All kingdoms did this back then. We're used to reading in the Bible, you came through the line of Judah. Well, they didn't have a line they came through. They came through a sword. If you were tough enough to take the throne, it was yours. So some of those that sat on the throne were not descendants of Nebuchadnezzar. God doesn't count them. God counts 3. And that's where he ends it, is the 3rd. All right, we better stop it there because I'm about voiced out.